local teachers marching for change.
Our kids deserve more than what we are given right now.
The demands they're making for the largest school district in the Buckeye State.
The default position should be that we're going to register someone to vote unless they choose not to.
A push to make your vote count. The deadline one state official wants to see to change Ohio's voting system.
That's why today I'm announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
Joe Biden enters an already crowded field of Democrats running for president, the surprising group that could determine the next round of leadership in 2020. Face the State begins right now. And good morning, everyone. We welcome you to Face the State. We're glad you're with us. I'm Scott Light. We are honored to have a terrific panel of guests, including Congresswoman Joyce Beatty is here. She serves the people of the 3rd District. She's done that since 2013. She's also the first woman ever to be Democratic leader of the Ohio House. Another guest, Franklin County Auditor Michael Stinziano, is back with us. He previously served on Columbus City Council and in the Ohio General Assembly. And Mahek Cooke is back as well. She rounds out our panel this morning. An attorney, former Chief of Staff to Lieutenant Governor Mary Taylor, and former legal counsel to Governor Kasich. Welcome all. It's good to have you here.
It's good to be home.
Now, it's good to have you back in the district, too, Representative. We, of course, you folks know by now, we like to have a well-rounded and even discussion. We meant to have Matt Borges sitting right beside Michael Stinziano this morning. Matt had something that came up last minute, so he couldn't join us, but he will be back sooner rather than later here on Face the State. Let's talk about the week in politics. In fact, we've got some pictures that we will roll from Thursday. The Columbus Education Association organized what they called a March for Schools Columbus Students Deserve. That's what they called it. It started at a firefighters union hall, then proceeded to City Hall. And among several things, those organizers said that if they had more school funding, that would enhance opportunities in the overall education for students in the Columbus School District. Representative Beatty, let me start with you. We all know that education is not so much a congressional issue, it's a local issue, but those folks they're your folks. They're
Absolutely.
Folks in your district. What concerns you about the challenges facing Columbus City schools?
Certainly. I think there are many, but I think when you start with teachers, my mother was in the educational system for many years. I have two sisters who still are teachers in the public school system. So I'm a big advocate for education, for teachers. I think they need more money. It's real simple for me. I think that teachers are grossly underpaid. So I know they are next week, which I'm real pleased. They're going to come in and have discussions about their contracts and if it could help, even though it's not a federal issue, right. Give them more money.
Okay.
That's where I am with that, on that issue as it relates to teachers. Now, I know the march that you talked about is more than just the teachers.
Sure.
It's because of the whole issue with the city and tax abatements. I'm also for making sure that we bring and continue to bring businesses here, because with businesses come jobs, but it also comes that those same types of constituents are employed. And that's important. So it's a complex, it's a difficult issue, but I think if we come together, we need to work this out and figure out how to have more of a win-win.
And all those tentacles lead to a tax base, and if there's an increasing tax base, that usually tends to help education dollars. Michael Stinziano, you have a young kindergartner in Columbus City Schools. There is some, this is a school district that obviously has some challenges, has a new superintendent coming in. What would you like to hear from Talisa Dixon and from the others who say that, you know what, we can bring reform to Columbus?
So I am fortunate. When I drop off my kindergartner, I get to see the teachers every day, and their passion and dedication for the students and for the district is evident. I think we're seeing changes with Columbus City School Board, with the new superintendent, and so really want to sit down and have that discussion. Clearly, the teachers feel that they need more money, more funding, and more resources so that they can provide the quality education they want. I also have a sister that is a teacher in Columbus City School as well, and I've seen the crowdfunding that she's had to do to make sure her students have resources, knowing some children may not have headphones in my son's kindergarten class. It's things like that that I know this is what the teachers care about, and that as a district we should be caring about.
Not to mention there are teachers out there who have to make those Target runs and Walmart runs and pick up construction paper and scissors, their own supplies that they're supplying for their classrooms. Mahek, is it a money issue? Is it we just need to put more dollars into per pupil in Columbus and in Ohio, you think?
Look, I think it's a complex issue. I don't think that money can buy a kid's willingness to learn or a parent's support. So the most important thing we need to start doing is strengthening our communities and our family base. And I say that also from personal experience. My mother was a Columbus City school teacher for a couple decades, and she bought the construction paper and the school supplies. And that idea is not inconsistent with wanting to ensure that teachers can afford and make a good standard of living. And that's not inconsistent with making sure that we're modernizing our schools so that our kids are in the best schools and buildings that are supported. But all of these ideas, and I agree with Congresswoman Beatty, they are all principles that are not in conflict. They're actually in direct alignment. So we're talking about increasing and thinking about how to increase economic development. That's going to help our community base and support the community. When you have a tax abatement, that's not inconsistent with what we're doing for our kids. We're building a foundation. We're injecting payroll taxes. We're investing in buildings. That is all going to help our economy and bring it forward. We will not see an immediate result when it comes to education. It's going to take time. It's going to take leaders like Congresswoman Joyce Beatty and local leaders to come together and say, how do we strengthen families and our communities first? Money isn't money is not going to solve the problem immediately.
Well, let me just add at this point, and thank you for reminding me about the teachers going in and buying the construction paper and buying those necessary things that's not included in the budget they get. In the last Congress, I was very fortunate enough to write a piece of legislation that allowed them to be repaid for those dollars, and it was put into another bill. So that it's just a small step, but it should be very helpful in helping teachers.
Well, and I always make the comparison, if our military members were out buying their own boots and fatigues and uniforms, there would be protest in the streets.
Yes.
But our teachers are doing it, and we can't get mad enough or get passionate enough to say, you know what, let's stop this. Let's pay them what they need and give them the money that they need.
Well, and part of the frustration with the abatements is the focus, because the state of Ohio's funding is too reliant on property taxes. And that's something that I'm very excited to see bipartisan legislation, the Cupp-Patterson proposal, looking for solutions. Their proposal suggests a need for $400 million more just in its first year. And so that underfunding is trickling down to local school districts, not only in Columbus, but across the state.
Let me go to another topic here that some say is antiquated as well, and that's Ohio's voting system and our registration system. In fact, I want to play some comments here from Secretary of State Frank LaRose from a couple of days ago.
And the way I've described this as anytime somebody interacts with state government should present an opportunity to update your information or to become a registered voter. And by the way, that should be an opt-out, not an opt-in system, meaning that the default position should be that we're going to register someone to vote unless they choose not to. Again, the Supreme Court upheld the old process for removing inactive voters. Just because it's been upheld by the Supreme Court doesn't mean it's ideal. It's not.
Mahek, it sounds like to me that among many things, that the new Secretary of State wants to take politics out of that voter registration system. And listen, let's get like states like California and Oregon and Washington and make it easy.
Absolutely. I mean, we should applaud the system of voting today in Ohio. We are standing in a modern age today where we need to continue to modernize and make it easier for voters. But if we look at Ohio, we have almost 30 days for voters to come to our state and be able to vote. When you compare that with a state like New York, I mean, that's a Democrat-led state. You're less than a week for voting. So I do think we have increased and modernized voting, but this is all about accessibility. So anytime you want to update your license or get a fishing license or any kind of intersection with the state, pay taxes, I think what Secretary LaRose is saying is to bipartisan legislators, what is the solution here? How do we ensure that we can make this easy for people to vote? But at the same time, I am very interested to see how we balance accessibility with security, because that's extremely important to maintain for voters in the state of Ohio.
And when the Secretary of State says it should be an opt-in, that you should, whether you're getting that fishing license or a driver's license, that it's automatic. Is that the right way to go?
It is, and let me also say ditto and 2 thumbs up to the Secretary of State. As a proud Democrat, we have been fighting for this for decades, because it's all about protecting the vote, having accessibility to the vote. And when you think of being able to be registered when you go and get a fishing license or your driver's license, I think it helps to make amends for all of those years where we have discriminated against people. I'm old enough to remember when people couldn't vote and when there was the poll tax and people were asking you to count jelly beans in a jar before you could vote. So now opening this door is the right thing to do, and I'm very proud of this Secretary of State. Conversely, we've had 8 years in the past of looking at people's records for voting being purged and all of those things that put us in a place that it was voter suppression. And so now it makes me proud that we could be on the road to join those 16 other states that have been and continue to get it right. So 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, we want to make voting hassle-free. Let me do this. You mentioned opening a door. Let me open up the door to a quick commercial here, and then when we come back, we will continue to talk about voting, and we will also talk about former Vice President Joe Biden finally entered the race for president this week.
Who's the best person to lead the country? And that's what it's going to be all about. And it's going to be for the voters to decide that.
Well, he has some front-runner status already, but new data shows voters with increasing influence may not be so sure about the former vice president. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. Let's continue to talk about that so important issue of voting and making it easier to register here in Ohio. Of course, we wanted you here for myriad reasons, Mr. Stinziano, but you happen to have a license plate that says, "Go vote."
It's an issue I'm a little bit passionate about. As a former director of the Board of Elections, I wear it every day with that license plate. Voter registration should be easier in the state of Ohio. It is a bit of a barrier for folks. Yes, 30 days of early voting is great, but if you're not registered, those 30 days aren't going to apply to you. And saw too many people when I served as director of the Board of Elections getting excited, hearing about an election, getting educated, and then finding out, but I missed the deadline to register, and now there is an opportunity. Very supportive of an opt-in proposal, something I actually...
Make it automatic.
Make it automatic. I proposed something when I served in the General Assembly that would have made it automatic. So I'm happy to see ongoing discussions, but want to see action.
One thing that Frank LaRose was talking about, and he was talking about the silos that are state government, that we've got to get the, ODNR talking to the Department of Revenue, or when somebody engages with state government, again, how to make it automatic. How do you break down those silos?
So the voter registration database is a challenge. You've got 88 different boards of elections. You have different touch points. You have people moving transient. And so that's always been the challenge. I think if the state leaders are dedicated to breaking down those silos, make those systems work, they can accomplish that and be very successful in that goal.
So let's pick up on another effort that the Secretary of State embarked on, and he called this the Fresh Start campaign. And again, we've got some graphics we'll put on your TVs here. So forms were sent out to 264,000 former voters in Ohio. More than 85,000 came back non-deliverable, and then just 540 people re-registered to vote. Mahek, start us off on this particular subject. Journalists are notoriously bad at math, but I went to the calculator here. 540 people who re-registered out of 264,000. That is less than 0.5%. Did those numbers surprise you?
Yes, they're surprising, but I think that's exactly why we are really focused on voting today. Secretary LaRose, between the voting sticker and having that contest out there to encourage people to vote, we're also trying different avenues for voting, whether it's by mail to increase and change your address, or we are also allowing online. But as voters, we also have to take responsibility. More than ever, people are moving out from, whether it's downtown to the suburbs, they're raising kids, they're moving to different communities. I think in the last couple of years, I've moved 2 to 3 times. But it's incumbent upon me as a voter to get online, and if I don't have a computer, I know I can go to the Columbus Public Library, which is free, and update my voting. We can't put the onus just on government. So yes, it's surprising, but it really is incumbent upon me to be a responsible citizen. If I want to vote, I have earned that right. I'm a U.S. citizen. I need to update my address.
Representative Beatty, when you see 85,000 votes that were returned non-deliverable, there will be some conservatives who say that's the reason why we need to have this purge law to make sure that we are keeping our voter rolls up to date and correct.
Well, I obviously disagree with that. I think part of the responsibility goes in that it's a two-way responsibility, but we have to do a better job of education and awareness. We have to make sure that people actually know when and how and what the rules are, because when you look at those numbers, folks in those categories aren't like us sitting at the table. Many of them don't have a computer and they don't know how to go online. Many people didn't even know that the Board of Elections had moved and what the time periods, because so often you only hear about what you can't do. We've taken this away. So I think as elected officials, as the media, we could do a better job of educating. And I think what this Secretary of State is doing is right in line, because now everybody's talking about the positive. When you go get your driver's license, when you go for a fishing license, someone's putting it in front of you, and it's making people know more about it. That was the reason that having souls to the polls, being able to vote on Sunday, having the churches get engaged. And we know when we look at the number of people who voted, which means they were registered to vote in this past midterm election, the number of individuals from 18 to 29 up, the number of African Americans voting up. Part of that reason people were excited about voting, and we did a better job of getting people registered. And much of that was because you had a base of people who were really upset about the purging of people's being able to get registered. And it's a movement. I really believe when you look at this, and I think that we're going to make this whole idea of being able to get registered when you buy a license or when you do something. Now, we just need the support of both sides of the General Assembly
and the Rose talked about that. He did.
And bicameral. I served in the State House, and I know you can have a great idea that comes down from a Secretary of State and gets overwhelming support on the House side. Now we need to make sure it's the House Democrats and Republicans who are in the majority in the House and the Senate. So we need to make sure that we push this through. And wouldn't it be nice to be able to say that we've done this in a bipartisan fashion?
And you know, I think the Secretary of State was looking at those optics, because he had a Democrat and a Republican standing beside on both sides of him the other day when he did that. You were talking about engagement. I love it when we get numbers. We had some new census numbers come out this week. Again, let's go to some graphics. We'll put those on your TVs for you. Take a look at this. So Chris Cillizza of CNN wrote this column this week, again, based on those new Census Bureau numbers that came out this week. And he said this: the headline was, "The real story of the 2018 midterms was the youth vote. Voters 18 to 29 were the prime driver in the midterm elections." And to that note, 20%, if you go back and look at 2014, 20% of 18 to 29-year-olds voted then. Look at 2018, 36%, almost double. 36% of 18 to 29-year-olds voted in the midterms. That was the largest increase of any demographic. I've said before that, you know, the youth vote is kind of like Atlantis. The riches are promised, but you've still got to find it. So who found the youth vote in 2018?
Well, I think you
Was it Democrats?
I think it's just the generation. I think millennials are more engaged with social media. They have the opportunity to know what's going on, get that education in different formats, and they're going to be consistent voters. It's exciting to see them voting in the midterm. I want to see how they do in an off-year local election, and then obviously we'll participate in the presidential. But we knew that millennial vote is going to be where the population, the shifts, where votes are if they show up, and I think you're going to see it be consistent going forward.
But I'm going to claim a little bit of that. I'm going to definitely say that the Democrats were out front in that movement, and I'm also going to say that the African American vote was out front. And I think the more we reward and we claim what's happening, and even when it's a bipartisan, we give credit to that. But we spent a lot of time talking about engagement. We spent a lot of time talking about let's have a movement, and millennials came through. And so I want to say thank you to them.
If you look at the numbers, again, midterm numbers, Asian and Hispanic vote up 13%. White vote was up 12%. To your point, African American vote was up 11%. Mahek, I'll pose a question to you this way. If you look at where the kind of the organic energy is on the Democratic side, if it is with women, minorities, and young vote, is that a three-legged stool that could spell some trouble for Republicans?
I'm not concerned about it. I think that these numbers did not surprise me. There's definitely an energy in the base, but I also think that a lot of individuals are now paying attention. It was because of top of the ticket when we looked at the presidential election, whether you love him or you hate him. President Trump brought a lot of individuals into this huge medium of paying attention to politics, of voting, and then we also have been in an area which is unfortunate, but we're very divisive as a country. We have individuals that are to the right and the left that is so socialist that I don't know what to make of it. So I don't think that this is going to be an indicator of our next presidential election. What's going to indicate our next presidential election is having President Trump on the ballot and a very strong Democrat. That's what's going to incite the base. It's not age, it's not demographics, it's the excitement that you're generating through good policy.
You just teed up the next perfect segue to our next topic. You were talking about how divisive things are right now. Let's talk about civility on the other side of a commercial break. We'll continue with more Face the State right after this. Welcome back, everyone. Earlier this week, an award went out to someone who is sitting at this very table this morning. Representatives Beatty and Steve Stivers received an award from Goodwill Industries for their work on civility. They are both integral parts as well of the Congressional Civility and Respect Caucus. Nice looking group shot right there. Representative Beatty, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was an honor. And we were really excited to receive the International Policy Leadership Award for Civility, because as we talk about how divisive things are, to have almost 30 members to join our Civility and Respect Caucus in the United States Congress, we think is landmark, and we're hoping that it will grow. You have to be a Democrat, and you have to be a Republican, and you have to actually interact and engage and try to change the face of all that we're going through right now.
I remember I was talking, I'm not going to mention names, but I was talking to some members of Congress, and we were talking about a Democrat and Republican, and I asked them, I said, have you two ever been to lunch? And there was an awkward silence, and they said, well, that's just not the way it works.
Well, we're trying to change that because we served, Michael and I have both served in the General Assembly. And I can remember when you would have a heated debate and you would argue on the floor, and then you would be at lunch or you would be at dinner laughing and talking about family issues and how we could really fix that problem we were just working on. We need to go back to some of that.
Mahek, Michael, how do we bring down the temperature of the divisiveness, again, as we're barreling toward a presidential election in 2020?
I mean, I think it's important for us to remember the fundamentals. You don't have to change somebody's mind to champion civility. And I think if we can embrace and acknowledge that, we're going to be far better in Washington. We need to take leadership from Congresswoman Joyce Beatty and Congressman Steve Stivers and push forward. But it's also the next generation of individuals that are going to continue to echo what we're learning through leadership and continue to champion this.
I think too. I'm glad you mentioned the next generation, because I don't want this, all of us have been around long enough. We have seen tumult. We've been around a little bit. We've seen the ups and downs of this country. But I don't want this generation, just speaking as a citizen, as a parent of teenagers, I don't want them thinking that this is the way our politics is. Absolutely. That we're uncivil all the time, or you can just jump on Facebook and say crazy things, crazy offensive things.
Well, I want to say congratulations to the Congresswoman, and I'm not surprised. I think we're very fortunate in Central Ohio, both at our congressional, our state house delegation, our local delegations with their different cities, always trying to put good policy forward. And I think we should be the model for the country, and I think the award recognizes that and continue to have those conversations. To your point, and I know the Congresswoman does it all the time, just pick up the phone. Have that conversation, have that discussion. When I served in the legislature, President Obhoff would call me on legislation, and I appreciated it. And we'd have the discussion and the debate, and would be able to do it in a very civil manner, and we'd have a better policy and proposal at the back end of it all.
Well, I think Mahek put it straightforward. You can disagree without being disagreeable, and it doesn't change my values or my beliefs. It's just listening a little more and then coming to that disagreement without talking about someone in a negative aspect that doesn't have anything to do with the issue. And that's what we need to take out of not only Congress, but we need to take it out of the White House. We need to make sure when we're looking at the top of the ticket and when we're looking at the commander-in-chief for this country, we need a change. And I'll be very open about that. I've been disappointed in the leadership that we have in the White House. This president has not paid attention to much of what we've been talking about.
You were talking about picking up the phone. I had a friend remind me the other day. I called her and I wanted to talk some politics, and I said, let's set up a conference call. And she just said, why don't I just come by your office? And I was like, well, yeah, duh. Let's have face-to-face, or, lunches, and you break bread and have a drink with somebody. That just, I don't know if that's a kumbaya moment, but you know what I'm getting to. It's about that interpersonal communication.
And we have to teach that to the younger generation and continue to remind them, look, politics and civility, yes, you can point to the White House, but I'm not demanding perfection today for my leaders. And if you really want to teach civility, I think your example is the best with Congressman Stivers. Start at the local level, start at the grassroots level. That we're not going to change the White House today, and that's not our mission. Our mission is for local citizens in Ohio, because when we start from the grassroots level, that's how you effectuate and impact change. So I challenge every individual, whether it's in Congress or in Senate or House of Representatives here in the General Assembly, start with your local, whether it's kids, millennials, interested parties, and let's talk about change, dialogue, and changing that message of civility and what that means to us in Ohio.
Let me say I agree.
Ditto. So we'll end on a kumbaya moment. How about that? Representative Beatty, I know you are heading back to D.C. Open invite whenever you're back in the district. Please come back. Okay?
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have all three of you. Thank you. And we say this every single Sunday. If it affects you, your family, and Ohio, we're here to make sure those accountable face the state.